Hello, and welcome to another episode of Train Lee Installs. Today I'm reviewing this locomotive. I just finished installing a Zimo decoder in. This is a LGB 2043 representing a GE44 of the Reichenbahn Railroad out of Switzerland. The locomotive's name was Arosa, and the number on the locomotive is 622. As standard with all my installs anymore, is that I send the locomotive out with the address of the locomotive number programmed into the decoder, allowing the end user, if they mess up the programming or what have you with that decoder, to be able to reset the decoder to its defaults, and that address of 622 will be restored, as well as all of the other features and functions that I've programmed. The sound project that I'm using on this decoder is originally a Heinz-Stappen sound project, and something interesting about these Swiss locomotives is that they use a pretty complex lighting system to represent different uses of the locomotive. And they also have, and Heinz-Stappen was one of the people that helped develop this with Zimo. They used a advanced mapping tool, if you will, to map how the lights function. And that is so, or aptly named, Swiss mapping. Well, this locomotive is no exception in that. It was a very early version of the 2043, and it had what I reference as a 3-wire motor block, which is not DCC ready by itself. The lighting also was purely analog originally, and I ended up rebuilding the motor blocks and updating them to become 4-wire motor blocks, and also reworking and rewiring the lighting boards completely on this locomotive. As part of that, I also created a new speaker box for the speaker that I used, and a new mount for the decoder with this locomotive. The speaker box and the mount were both 3D printed and attached to another piece of styrene that's mounted internal to the locomotive. I can show you a picture of that real quick here. After looking at the picture, you can kind of see how it's all set up internal to the locomotive. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through. In addition to that, I include some pretty extensive documentation showing all the different functions, and including providing a link to the video in the documentation. With Heinz-Stappen's sound projects, a lot of them he tried to thoroughly document, which also I include with the locomotive. This particular locomotive has a bunch of history on it, or the models of locomotives. But he also set it up to work with the pantographs, and he documents the functions as I have remapped some of the functions and moved them around and added some modern scripts and so on. Please pay attention to that documentation more than his. But what I wanted to reference, which is really kind of important, is that there is a series of functions that describe the various lighting features on the locomotive. As you see, some of them are colored in and show different effects of how the lights work. And he tries to explain the best as he can is what those lights are doing. I'll try to go through a little bit of that. And then, you know, there's literally 2 pages of that, of explaining all those different lighting features. So, as standard with all the functions, and I'll take a look at my function list. Well, let's go ahead and turn its sound on to start with. Oops, I gotta find the right, there we go. So the locomotive's address is 622, and the sound is turned on with F8. So I'll go ahead and press F8. And then the headlights are turned on with just F0. And in this case, I'll flip it the direction. So all 3 headlights, and you can kind of see, I'll move it a little bit, so maybe you can see a little better in the light. So all 3 headlights are lit in the forward direction. So when you reverse it, this is standard headlight, or this is the standard operation. When you reverse the locomotive, and it is, in this case, you can tell the front of the locomotive from the back of the locomotive, because LGB put the engineer in the cab, which you can't really see in this video. And he's in the front of the locomotive. Additionally, originally when they created the locomotive, they put a switch in the front that you could access from the cab, which would allow you to switch the pantographs on and off, and later how the lights functioned and so on. When you reverse the locomotive, based off of the direction, the right rear light is on. Now that can be it can be turned on so that that's what they would reference as a standby mode, or what have you. So both the respective right rear lights are turned on, and no other lights are on in the locomotive. Now to further that, you can also, I'll go ahead and flip it back to forward. F5 turns on the cab light. Now, an adaptation or a change that I made with the sound project is when you change directions, F5, the cab light direction comes on. Originally, he just had it set up so that just one or the other was independently controlled. I just set it up so that they're both controlled at the same time. Move back to forward here. Now moving to F1. A lot of times that's the bell. Well, these don't have bells. So I'll go ahead and change its directions. Now F1 turns on, and you can't really see them, unfortunately. Maybe I can move it around. Turns on those red, these red LED lights at the back of the locomotive. Now that is used in Switzerland when the train is being operated, or the locomotive is being operated without a train. So when we flip it back forward, all 3 headlights come on. You can reverse that a little bit. And that is when F1 is pressed. When I turned off F1, it goes back to the normal operation. As further functions, that rear single light may be turned off independently with just the headlights on. And some of the mapping is a little confusing on that, so please refer to the diagrams of how the lights work. And I can try to explain those. Now, F2, let's go back to forward, is the standard whistle. And that whistle is kind of neat because you press it, and if you lock that key down, it plays as long as that key is locked. Once you release it, does the ending sound. F3 is the conductor whistle or train whistle. This is to ensure that it's kind of like the in the US where we say all aboard. In this case, they have a whistle that says, and to ensure that the passengers are all on board. Now F5, as I referenced, is the cab lights. Another neat feature is that the cab lights, when the locomotive starts moving, the cab lights automatically turn off. And you can't really see the other one. I'll bring it forward a little bit. So switch directions again and bring the locomotive forward, and you see the cab light turned off as soon as I started moving. And once it stops moving, the cab light comes back on. F6 is the station announcement. Kind of hard to hear over the locomotive's noise. And then let's see, F7 is essentially the long distance lights or the high beams. You don't see a lot of change, but they do get brighter when I press it. And then F8 turns on and off the main sound. F9 I updated. This is the curve squeal sound. And it plays it actually just plays two different sounds based off of the speed of the locomotive. And it only plays when the locomotive is moving. So here. Oh, that's not good. I gotta clean that sound up. I'll fix that before sending it off. I'm not quite sure what happened to that sound, but I'll fix it. And then, so we'll come back to that one. And then we have F10 and F11, which would, if they were hooked up, would operate the pantographs, raising and lowering them. As per the customer, he doesn't use the pantographs, and I've set them up so that they, if you unlock or release the pantograph, it just automatically springs open on either side. The motors are still there in order so that they can spring up. F12 plays a coupling sound, and also causes the coupler waltz. And that is basically push me, pull you. If there were servos in the couplers, it would open and close the couplers. F13, or that's the uncoupling. F13 is the coupling. Not real loud. F14 and 15 are different air pumps. It's one air pump. And then F15. Remember, there's a lot of things on these. While these are electric locomotives, there's still a lot of things that are also air operated on them, such as lowering and raising the pantographs, the brakes, and so on. And also the train brakes. So they have various air pumps. F16 mutes the sound. F17 and 18 are the volume controls. F18 raises the volume. F18 lowers the volume. Now this is some of the Swiss mapping with regards to the lights. So F19 through all the way to F26 is different lighting features, and they are explained within that diagram. So if I take a look at shift to F19, and then I press the function. Let's see, it'll turn on the rear lit headlight or the rear red lights, and only activated for the front lights in cab 2 and then cab 1 on the locomotive. And that's what they say, what he referenced as a shuttle train operating by cab 2, and then the other one, F20, is a shuttle train operating in cab 1. We'll turn that one back off, and then you can turn off just the rear light. So that is F21 and F22. So if I let me see, F21, no, F22 turns off just that single rear light, and that's if you're operating with a train or a secondary locomotive behind that. They might even, if they had a pusher locomotive on it, they might have the headlights on or off, correction, and the just the red lights on to indicate the end of the train. Like I said, it's pretty complex. And then F25 completely turns off the running lights, but allows you to have like the cab lights on or what have you. And then finally F26 would represent the locomotive being in standby mode, so that what happens with F26 is that just the respective lights, the respective right light, rear light is on. It's the same on the front of the cab at the moment. So I'm Christine McNary. Thank you for watching. This is another install. And it uses, again, just as reference, it uses an MS950 Zimo decoder. And I've paired it with a Visitone FR58 speaker, which is mounted in a custom 3D printed speaker box. And thanks for watching.